Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our family Bible study with the aid of Zoom. Today is a historical day in the life of America when the 46th President of the United States was sworn in, and in addition, a female as Vice President. A moment of solemnity and reverence was observed as President Joe Biden stressed the need for hope in a crisis. A nation made divisive, especially along racial lines, and the disaster of the coronavirus pandemic. Unity, another area in which the president asked for every American to join in achieving this goal. And so we pray for the Americans, as also our country, to rise to the occasion and to demonstrate to others the strength of unity, that we draw on the power, the strength of our God and His Holy Spirit that dwells in us. And may we open our hearts, our souls, to face this challenge. Jesus led the way, and we need only to follow in His footsteps. I wish for those who sang amazing voices to use their gifts in arenas such as this, in a place such as we are, and elsewhere, to proclaim the glory of God. And there was Garth Brooks singing Amazing Grace. And I may venture to say, singing that brought tears to viewers around the world. Reverend Sylvester Beamon pronounced the benediction that challenged Americans to unite in the strength of their collective faith. Is Elder Smelly available? Beg your pardon, Reverend Smelly.
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, are you ready for prayer time now?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Let us come before our great God in prayer. Our God, we thank you for the reminder of that song, of how great you are. Great not only as our creator God, making this world and sustaining it by your mighty power, but we also recognize you as our great God, who comes to our lives personally to sustain us and to protect and to guide us. We recognize, Lord, your greatness, your power, that you rule over all things in majesty from your glorious throne on high. And we have to say, what a mighty God we serve, reigning now above from your throne of love. And to consider, Lord, that despite your greatness and might, you took time to love each of us and show your love to us individually. You sent Jesus to die for us, but more than that, you communicate that love to us by the blessed Holy Spirit. Thank you for that. We are your sheep, and as sheep of your pasture, we come tonight laying before you our needs. Lord, for some of our lives, we have gone through some tough times, treacherous valleys. We have messed up in so many ways. We have wandered from you, but you're still our shepherd and the good shepherd of our sheep, of the sheep. And we can call to you and realize that you're a God who gives your life for the sheep. And we are in your hand and in your fold. And we are secure in you. Because regardless of what happens in our world and in the things that we encounter, we will declare we have a good shepherd. Thank you for being our shepherd. The wolves around have been trying to devour our lives. The dangers in the path would sometimes want to trip us up, but we have a good shepherd who leads your sheep, sometimes in green pastures, many times by still waters, but you restore our souls. And we give you thanks for that. We remember at this time those who have been going through a particular dark valley, like those who have suffered the loss of loved ones. We think of the Vassal family at this time. We think of Sister Juanica Grant and what they're going through. And we pray in a very special way. May they feel your warm embrace and sense your hand and your guidance. Lord, your sheep need you, and we cry to you for help. God, I pray your protective care shall be something that we will be convinced of tonight. I pray, Lord, for the situations in our country. We see a year that has started, yet so many people have lost, have been killed by violence. And we wonder sometimes what it will take to change the situation of this country. That means in some communities there's great mourning, some mothers losing a son. And in these days when the violence comes and it takes out even women and children, oh Father, have mercy upon us. Tears are flowing. People are in need of your grace and your help. We see what the ravages of the pandemic is doing. People are losing jobs. Some people have had their work hours cut. Income is diminishing. Things are becoming very difficult. But in the midst of that, we come to you because you know the way we take. Have mercy upon us. We give ourselves to you tonight and we say, Lord, be our guide, be our help, be the one who we run into as our great resort, and we can find a hiding place in you. And we pray, Lord, pour out your mercy and pour out your grace. As we come tonight in a particular way, we ask you to remember the church family as we explore these topics. First of all, we want to give you great thanks for the opportunity to be looking at your word. Your word means much to our lives. Change our situation. Give us a word, Lord, that will lift the gloom, change the darkness, cause light to shine. We're dealing with a topic of hope. Oh God, you've caused us to find hope in your word. So as you allow us to share and to listen to your word, may we be able to lift our eyes up from our situation and realize that we can hope in God. We thank you for Richard tonight as he comes to share that word. We pray a special anointing upon him. Give us ears that are keen to hear and hearts that are open to you. Lord, I pray you'll fashion each word that it may be suitable to each heart. You know the individual needs. And in the way we come before you, Let the word fall upon a rich ground tonight. So anoint Brother Richard, we pray in a special way. Lord, remember Brother Blake as he leads tonight, and you give him the strength and the enablement and the wisdom to be able to guide us into a state of being ready for listening to your word. Bless everyone who joins tonight. And I pray you will reward us by the nourishment we'll get from the food of your word tonight as you break it out for us. We commit everything to you and we trust you. You are a great God, a shepherd who gives his life for the sheep. You are the great shepherd, and we bless you tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.
You are the great shepherd, and we bless you tonight. It's worth repeating. Thanks to you, Reverend Smelly, and indeed to our sister Angela, in areas of ministry that invites us to have a closer walk with our God. A time when our testimony is so precious to our Lord, and was also a blessing to those participating in our meeting. Is there anyone who will bring us a testimony? Please. Our sister Jenny will bring a follow-up on her testimony she gave last week and the state of her mother's health. After which, Sister Angela will again bring us another of her musical presentation. Sister Jenny.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, brothers and sisters. I would like to share with you this evening, but before I share what I have to share, I just want to say something about hope as we're studying hope in a time of crisis. And it's words for all of us, that hope is not a situation. And you will see why I am saying this before I tell you what I have to say. Hope is not a location. Hope is not a possession. Hope is not an experience. Hope is more than all of these. Hope is a person, and his name is Jesus. That is what hope is. Now, last Wednesday, I shared with you about my 97-year-old mother who is in a care home in London. And a month ago or more, she was tested positive for COVID. She was put in isolation, and 14 days later, they tested her and she was negative. And while she was in isolation, my sisters and I and the family, we said, well, she's 97 years old. May the Lord's will be done. And we rested in that. And she came out and she was negative and she was in very good health. Not a thing wrong with her. She spoke with us and we dialogued with her. She even asked one of my sisters to send her a parcel, which my sister was preparing. I spoke with my sister yesterday. She was preparing to mail today to my mother. Well, the pandemic is out of control, and I believe they're panicking, and the health services are overrun. And so they decided they would go into all the care homes and just vaccinate all the people who are in the care homes. So the Saturday before, I told you Wednesday we were giving thanks for my mother. They were all vaccinated in the care home. And I said to my sister, I'm surprised that they have vaccinated my mother since she has already had COVID. That they should be testing her for some, whether she has a
Reoccurrence.
Yeah, whether she's immune to it now or something. What that test that they give to them, I can't remember what the name is. Anyway, if she has any antibodies rather than but they're just going around vaccinating everyone. Well, yesterday we received a call from the care home to say that she has reacted badly to the vaccination and she's not in a good place. So here we are again, back saying, may the Lord's will be done, because she was fine and the vaccination has now been given and she's now in a bad place. She has reacted to it. And it brought me to the same words that I said to you before. Hope is not in the situation. And a lot of people are hoping for this vaccine to be the cure-all of everything. And yes, we're happy for it because it will certainly help, but not everybody is going to be able to take this vaccine and get out. Some may be some may have a bad reaction like my mother has had now. And so let us just remember that our hope is Jesus. And in Matthew 28, verse 20, he says, I will be with you always. So we're just trusting the Lord, that whatever happens, we know that he is with us and he is our hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Jenny. And Sister Angela, I hope I'm not overloading you with another song, please. Thanks again, Sister Angela. And the whole church can say, praise the Lord, because he's deserving of it. In order for us to have a right understanding of the scriptures, it is necessary to have someone to guide us, some good books and some good men, but above all, the Spirit of grace, God's Holy Spirit, to lead us into all truth. Against this background, I invite our Reverend Beckford, a man anointed in the past, a man anointed now, for the teaching of God's word. Reverend Beckford.
Thank you, Elder Blake. Good evening to everyone.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
It is good to be in this space once more.
Good evening.
Good evening to you, Sister Marcia. It's really good to be in this space once more. And thank you, Elder Blake, for leading out. And as always, it is rather an inspiration to listen to Sister Jenny as she shares. And we will be praying. We are praying for your mother, Sister Jennifer, as we hope in the Lord Jesus Christ. And as you put forward, that our hope is indeed in our Lord. We hope indeed for improvement in her health, even as she battles the reaction to the vaccine. But as usual, always a blessing hearing you share from your heart. Good to be here, and I must apologize for last week. Circumstances beyond my control, ready to go, but a truck decided to snap my cable line and did not choose to tell us. The driver of the truck did not choose to tell us there's some construction happening above from where we live. And so they snapped the line, and we found out, myself and my neighbor, we found out the day after. So for the entire night, we were there hoping for Flo to restore our service. But little did we know that there was a disconnect with the line from the main source. So we could hope all we want, but we weren't getting anything until that line of connection was restored. And with that backdrop, I want us to enter into our discussion tonight, into our study, by first affirming what hope is, and also the relationship that it plays with faith. And we said on Sunday in the sermon that faith and hope, they do go hand in hand. And Reverend Smelly, I think, also alluded to the relationship between the two. And after service on Sunday, a sister asked me, well, that would be my first question. She said, what is the difference between faith and hope? And, you know, to use my experience last week, I would say that faith is that line that got snapped, disconnected me from the source. And so my hope was really futile. What I willed for, what I anticipated was futile because it wasn't grounded in any connection or any real matter that could actually give some life to my hopes. As we talk about hope in times of crisis, it is critical for us to make the distinction between the two, but also see the wondrous unity between these two Christian virtues. This is not the text for study, but if you turn to it in 1 Corinthians 13, verse 13, that chapter on love, it says, these three remain, faith, hope, and love, right? But the greatest of these is love. So there the author makes a distinction of the three, faith, hope, and love, suggesting to us that there is indeed a difference. However, when you look at Titus chapter 1, let's go to Titus 1, verse 2, we see the relationship between these two Christian virtues. Titus 1, verse 2 says, a faith and knowledge resting on the hope of eternal life, which God does not lie, promised before the beginning of time. And at his appointed season, he brought his word to light through the preaching entrusted to me by the command of our God, our Savior. So here the author of Titus is suggesting to us that faith rests on hope. All right. And the author of Hebrews then says in chapter 11, verses 1, faith is being sure that what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. Faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. So hope is an anticipation, an eager awaiting for the realization of something that we believe, something that is grounded in a belief system. That is indeed hope, that eager anticipation of a bright future, of an outcome that is one that is for the best interest of the person who is hoping, but that is grounded in a belief system. That's the confidence. Faith really gives rise to confidence, and hope gives rise to anticipation, anticipation grounded in confidence. Now, going back to my example of my wire being snapped, if I knew that the wire was disconnected, I would not have any hope of getting back my internet, my cable, and my television service for the evening. It would be ridiculous to think that, because there is no connection to flow. So there would be no anticipation on my part. But little did I know that it was snapped, but I was still hoping, but it was not grounded in a right and proper belief system, right? I use an example I used a couple weeks ago at Emmanuel Missionary Church to speak of what we call hope and its relationship with faith and how the two really complement each other. My son loves the pool. We got an inflated pool during last year, because his mother decided that, boy, you know, the boys are home, so they need to be very active. We got an inflated pool that we put around the back. Every now and again, we have to blow it up and, you know, get water in it, fill it up with some water around the back. I tell you something, my son, I know that when he gets his home in the future, he's going to have a pool in that, not an inflated one. He's going to get a real pool because he talks about that all the time. So we normally blow it up and fill it with water and put it around the back. Now, we haven't done so in a while. And a couple weekends ago, he said to me the Friday night, Daddy, can we go in the pool? And I said to him, yes, let's go in the pool the Saturday. And this boy couldn't sleep the night. He was filled with excitement. Joseph got up as early as 6 o'clock that morning, either 6 or 6:30. We were still lying in bed. But if you know my son, he's on top of his voice. He's talking to everybody. You know, the house is filled with his voice, laughter, and everything. Why? Because for him, this is pool day. Daddy's going to blow up that pool and fill it with water. And himself and Jabari are going to have a grand time in it. And for the entire morning, the boy is nagging me, will you get the pool ready? I need to go swim. And we you know, I did what I had to do. And he got into the pool, and Hope realized, but he was hoping, he anticipated with much eagerness the experience in the pool. But what gave him that great anticipation was the fact that his father would be very instrumental in setting up the pool for him. He believed that. It's something that I do anytime they ask and I can do it, I do it. And so he believed that, right? He had confidence in that, and that gave rise to his great anticipation. Hope and faith working in tandem. Tonight, we're going to work on Habakkuk for a little bit. And we have to conclude tonight because we will not go into next week. Next week is Keswick week of meetings. So I think the session will be joined in that group next week. So I only have tonight for us to do some work on Habakkuk in terms of the theme, hope in times of crisis. And I want you to turn to chapter 2 as we try to understand this thing called hope, also faith, how they work, but more so the hope in the times of crisis as seen by Habakkuk. So we're going to be looking at chapter 2, and I call our study tonight the oracles of woe, right? The woe oracles, or the oracles of woe that we find in chapter 2. And I have some work for you, and I'm going to ask Angela if she could actually get that ready, because I'm going to break you up in a couple groups. I'm going to break you up in 3 groups. There are actually 5 woes in Habakkuk chapter 2 there, from verses 6 all the way up to verses 20. And there are 5 woes. And the reason why I was led to this tonight is because of what is happening in our country currently. Those of you following the news would have heard that over the past weekend, the murder rate jumped significantly because a number of Jamaicans were killed over the weekend by criminal elements. And that is troubling, rather troubling, because it is statistic that is consistent, and it has been consistent for a while now. And it begs the question, can we really have hope to have a secure, violent-free Jamaica for our children, our children's children. If the Lord should tarry, if the Lord choose not to return in our generation and that of our children, what kind of Jamaica will they see in the next 10 to 20 years? Will it continue to be a place where bloodletting is as common as us going to the bathroom on a daily basis? So that was troubling. What is also troubling as well is the experts are saying that the challenges we're facing as a nation in terms of our violence and our criminal activities are linked to deeper issues, deep-seated spiritual, social, economic, psychological, and mental issues. To deal with what we're going through is to deal and address those particular matters. And I think the book of Habakkuk and also the minor prophets on a whole, they are texts that really strike a parallel with our Jamaican, our little Jamaican context. And our little Jamaican context is also in light of the North American, European context. We are in relationship with these super states within those continents, and that affects our reality. And I think we have to ask ourselves a question in terms of how hopeful are we for the future, and what is it that we can hold on to that can give us some hope as a people, as individuals, as we look into the future. So we're going to read, and the work I'm going to give you is that I'm going to have 3 breakout rooms, and 2 rooms will get 2 woes and 1 room will get 1 woe. And what I want you to do when we break into these rooms, within each woe, I think there is a Jamaican parallel. There is a Jamaican parallel. Within each woe, there is also a hope. There is a hope presented in each woe, right? The woe really is a pronouncement of judgment. That's what the woe is in this text, right? And in summary, the book of Habakkuk here at this juncture is Yahweh, the Lord, responding to the prophet who has raised an alarm regarding the realities, the crisis realities on the ground in his community. Yahweh responds in chapter 1 and chapters 2 to say, I will address the matter. Do not worry. I am at work. I have a vision for my people. I am going to give you some insight as to what will happen. And the insight he presents to the prophet is that he's going to use an external body of people, the Babylonians, to bring judgment on the people of Israel, specifically Judah. And in doing so, the prophet must not worry, because even though he's using the Babylonians, this rootless set of people, rootless in their treatment of people, they have no regard for humanity and lesser nations as they would see them. Yahweh has a plan of judgment, and this is where the woe comes in, a pronouncement of judgment for these evil Babylonians, for this evil empire, for this monstrous empire that is wreaking havoc not only on the nation of Judah, but also on other nations. And the woes now are presented in chapter 2 to respond to these Babylonians. And it is Yahweh saying to the prophet, This is my plan of action. I want you to ground your hope in this. Anticipate and wait for this. And the text we read on Sunday was the response of the prophet in regard to the metaphor of the fig tree, the olive tree, the cattle, and so forth, then affirming that he will trust and rejoice in the God of his salvation. So let's turn to Habakkuk chapter 2, and let me share my screen with you. And, so I'm going to ask one person to read from verses 6 to 8, another person to read from 9 to 11, and one individual from 12 to 17, and then the final reader from 18 to 20. So that's one reader from 6 to 8, another reader from 9 to 11, and then another reader from 12 to 17, and the final reader 18 to 20. So here we go. First reader, verses 6 to 8 of Habakkuk chapter 2. You have a volunteer?
Woe to him who piles up stolen goods and makes himself wealthy by extortion. How long must this go on? Will not your debtors suddenly arise? Will they not wake up and make you tremble? Then you will become their victim.
9 to 11. Thank you, Elder Blake.
Woe to him who builds his house by unjust gain, setting his nest on high to escape the clutches of ruin. You have plotted the ruin of many peoples, shaming your own house and forfeiting your life. The stones of the wall will cry out, and the beams of the woodwork will echo it.
Thank you, Reverend Smelly. Somebody know from 12 to 17?
Woe to him who built a city with bloodshed. Are you hearing me?
Hearing you, yes.
And establishes a town by injustice. Has not the Lord Almighty determined that the people's labor is only fuel for the fire, that the nation exhausts themselves for nothing? For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. Woe to him who gave drink to his neighbors, pouring it from the wineskin till they are drunk, so that we may gaze on their naked bodies. You will be filled with shame instead of glory. Now it is your turn. Drink and let your nakedness be exposed. The cup for the Lord's right hand is coming around to you, and his grace will cover your glory. The violence you have done to Lebanon will overwhelm you, and your destruction of animals will terrify you. For you have shed human blood, you have destroyed lands and cities, and everyone in them.
Right? Who just read a while ago?
Colonel Richards.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. 18 to 20. Final reader.
Okay, I will read. Of what value is an idol carved by a craftsman, or an image that teaches lies? For the one who makes it trusts in his own creation. He makes idols that cannot speak. Woe to him who says to wood, "Come to life," or to lifeless stone, "Wake up." Can it give guidance? It is covered with gold and silver. There is no breath in it. The Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth be silent before him.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cleve. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to ask that the breakout rooms be prepared. Just need 3 rooms, and I want you all to participate in those rooms. So what you're going to be looking for is the number 1, the Jamaican parallel to the woe that has been identified or highlighted in the text, right? Find the Jamaican parallel. What is in our Jamaican current reality now that is like this particular woe that the author has spoken of? And secondly, what is the hope that the Lord has given to the prophet in this particular in response to this particular woe? What is the hope presented to the prophet in this particular, in response to this particular woe, right? So there are 2 things, the Jamaican parallel, right? And secondly, the hope that is embedded in the text that, that is responding to this particular woe. And when we come together, we'll see, well, is it something that we too can cling to in regard to not just as a nation, but as individuals as we experience the matters raised. All right, so group 1, breakout room 1, you will look at woes 1 and 2, which is captured in verses 6 to 11. So that is your verses 6 to 11. So that if you enter breakout room 1, you will be doing woes 1 and 2, located in verses 6 to 11. If you're in breakout room 2, you'll be doing woes 3 and 4, which are located in verses 12 to 17. 12 to 17. And then breakout room 3, you will have 1 woe, and that will be found in verses 18 to 20. 18 to 20. So breakout room 1, woes 1 and 2, verses 6 to 11. Breakout room 2, woes 3 and 4, breakout room verses 12 to 17. And breakout room 3, woe 5, and verses 18 to 20. All right? We all on the same page? Everybody understand the task at hand? You will have, it is now 7:53. This is not a lengthy discussion or even research. I find that these texts, there are words there, yes, that need some real study and understanding of the history. And when we come back together, we can talk about that. But this assignment can take you up to about 8, it's now 7:53, 8:05, between 8:05, 8:10. So we're going to break you out into rooms now. Please engage the breakout room. Do not sit in there and say nothing. Talk to your friends and brothers and sisters about the text. All right, Angela? And if you're following us on YouTube, I'm going to ask you to choose a passage if you're on YouTube, and just go ahead with the instructions that I gave. So you'll be working by yourself, or if you're home with your family or with your around friends, you can go ahead and work together. But just choose one of the particular divisions. That's woe 1 and 2, found in verses 6 to 11, woes 3 and 4 found in verses 12 to 17, and woe 5, 18 to 20. So if you're on YouTube, go ahead, get cracking on it, open the scriptures, and begin to find that Jamaican parallel to that particular woe, and then the hope that is embedded in response to that woe. All right, great. Good to have everybody back. And we're going to look forward to our time of discovery together in terms of this particular passage. So a precursor to this passage is actually, these woes pretty much are picking up from this response by the Lord to the prophet in chapters 2, and it is against a particular nation, right? Or you could say the ruler of this nation. It actually begins in verse 4, which is a continuation of verse 1 in chapter 2 there. The Lord said, he is puffed up, from the NIV. His desires are not upright, but the righteous will live, or the just will live by faith. And he continues, indeed, wine betrays him. He is arrogant and never at rest, because he is as greedy as the grave, and like death is never satisfied. He gathers to himself all the nations and takes captive all the peoples. So in terms of the historical context, this is indeed a case against Babylon by the Lord. And it is not just against Babylon, but it can be applied to in any, I believe, society or in any space that parades themselves with a level of arrogance and a level of invincibility in regard to their actions that are wreaking havoc on people's livelihoods and people's lived experiences. So on the backdrop, the Lord decides, I'm going to give a lament of judgment on this particular nation, this particular individual. And here we find the woes of lament. And these are scattered throughout the prophetic literature. And so we find it here in Habakkuk, a series of woes that are written, directed at this particular kingdom, this particular empire that is arrogant, it's evil, it's wicked, it is destroying people's lives. The very fabric of the society has been eroded. And the Lord is saying to the prophet, it has not gone unnoticed. I am aware and I am acting on behalf of the righteous and the oppressed and those who are outcast and downtrodden in this particular society. So group one, woes 1 and 2 are captured in verses 6 to 11. So the members of group 1, be prepared now. What is the woe that is mentioned there in verses 6 to 8, the first woe? Group 1 members, now is the time to speak. What is the first woe mentioned in verses 6 to 8?
Our leader is Sister Georgia, but I'm not hearing her. So we had identified larceny and extortion.
Larceny and extortion. Right? Woe to him who piles up stolen goods and makes himself wealthy by extortion. Describe extortion in the text for me, and why, and its parallel in the Jamaican context.
Dictionary.
I found it rather interesting when I was doing this study, what that really meant at the time and its parallel in our Jamaican context.
Well, can you hear me?
Yes, hearing you.
Okay, my power went, so I was off for that.
Okay.
We were looking at him who piles up stolen goods, and it actually speaks about making himself wealthy by extortion. So we kind of just use the extortion there to mean extortion in our context as well. where you're taking money from people by under coercion or by force. So, well, that's really why we went with extortion.
Another word that could be used there, Sister Georgia, is what some translations actually use the word pledge, taken in pledge. The NIV uses the word extortion, but other translations use the word pledge. Those who have loaded themselves, how long will you load yourselves with goods taken in pledge? Go ahead, Sister Georgia.
Is that like debt creditors or debtors?
Yeah, I think, there are two verses that I think can shed some light on it and give some clarity. If you look at Exodus 22, verses 25 to 28, that gives some more understanding, cultural understanding. This really is an abuse of what is described in Exodus, and the Lord was very mindful to instruct the Jewish people as to how to go about this particular creditor and debtor relationship. So it's Exodus 22, and then somebody can find Deuteronomy 24 in the meantime. So Exodus 22, 25 to 28.
25, if you lend money to one of my people among you who is needy, do not be like a money lender. Charge him no interest. If you take your neighbor's cloak as a pledge, return it to him by sunset, because his cloak is the only covering he has for his body. What else will he sleep in? When he cries out to me, I will hear, for I am compassionate.
You see that word pledge coming up there again, right? If you take your neighbor's cloak as a pledge, as collateral, really, we use the term collateral these days. If you take it as a pledge, return it to him by sunset, because his cloak is the only covering he has for his body. What else can he sleep in? Now let's look at Deuteronomy 24. Deuteronomy 24, 10 to 13. All right, somebody find it? Want to read that? Deuteronomy 24, 10 to 13.
When you make a loan of any kind to your neighbor, do not go into his house to get what he is offering as a pledge. Stay outside and let the man to whom you are making the loan bring the pledge out to you. If the man is poor, do not go to sleep with his pledge in your possession. Return his cloak to him by sunset, so that he may sleep in it. Then he will thank you, and it will be regarded as the righteous act in the sight of the Lord your God.
Like that last line, it will be regarded as a righteous act in the sight of the Lord your God. Here is an economic relationship between individuals, and the Lord is saying to the community, how you treat your neighbor in regard to this particular relationship can be considered righteous and unrighteous, right? And so the act of the pledge there, right, was a cultural practice. You're borrowing something, so you need to ensure that you can guarantee to the creditor that, boy, I will repay, or I will give back. However, what the Babylonians did is that they abused this practice, right? The laws were set out in Israel as to how it should actually, how you proceed with this particular relationship, right? And even in Israel, and you read other prophets, they were actually usurping the law and abusing the law. And when they did that, people's livelihood would have been affected, and their humanity also would be affected, because it brought shame and disgrace on the people. And the Babylonians took it another step. They were not only doing it to individuals, but they were doing this to nations, right? Because as they traded with nations, they were the superpower. You know, at the time, they were empire. They were the dominant economic force, and so they had the handle, and the debtors. They had the blade in their hands. Those who owed the Babylonians. So what you found is that they were abusing this, and this became atrocious in the eyes of Yahweh. And it was at crisis points, because it was not merely disrupting people's lives, it was also destroying their lives and their property. They were holding on to the pledges in abundance, and the law stipulated, well, they were not inclined to follow the law, but the law Yahweh has already outlined to his people. This is a practice, but you must do so in a righteous way. So that is the extortion there, Sister Georgia.
Pastor Richard?
Yeah.
All right, two things. It reminds me of the Merchant of Venice and Shylock. And you remember that case where Portia spoke about the quality of mercy is not strained and all of that. So yeah. Shylock was trying to use the letter of the law, so to speak, to get a pound of flesh out of Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas mercy intervened, or could have intervened to have the outcome as something different, more righteous. So sometimes you have to look at the form as against the letter or the substance of the law. And right. Secondly, interestingly, I think this morning or yesterday, I heard a news report about an amendment to the law, or a new law which is being discussed in Parliament, that would protect small businesses that have to borrow money, so that the creditors would not have the right to use violence against them, because perhaps it is speaking about, like, same-day loan companies in Jamaica, which are very attractive to persons who are in debt. But when the persons default on the loan, the way that they go about collecting their money or trying to collect their money, they actually threaten and to abuse the person who owes them the money, perhaps without even going through the court system initially. So it just reminds me of something that is happening right now in Jamaica, that mm-hmm. if we have individually, we can do a little more research into it.
No. Thanks for that insight, Sister Paula. Really good, because what the woe is actually highlighting to us is that the dominant power can actually use the law to in a very oppressive way upon those who are not at the seat where laws are made, and also they do not have any say in the execution of the law. But the Babylonians, who were the dominant figures, they were the architects of the law, and they were they executed the law, but they were doing so in a way that they loaded themselves. It was about what they were getting out of it, how they were profiting at the expense of the nations and others. And the term extortion, we understand it in our context, in a way where, but if you come from certain parts of Kingston, Spanish Town, Montego Bay, and it is so prevalent now in the Jamaican urban areas, and I think it has even moved into rural areas, where there are entities set up, run by individuals, that extort from people money and other possessions in order for people to feel a sense of protection and feel a sense of safety and security. But if we think that is the only challenge we face in terms of extortion, we cannot play a blind eye to also corporate Jamaica and also government who may feel tempted as well to act in this particular way as how the Babylonians were acting, right? So it's not just the man downtown who is trying to get a little $100, $1,000 a week from each stall to ensure some boy offer them security. But we also have to examine and pray that in our Jamaican society, that the banks that are out there, the other financial institutions, other institutions that serve people are not
people in the church,
are the church as well. The church institutions set up are not what? Exploiting the people economically. In the name of what? In the name of offering a service. Right?
The banking fees, yes.
The Lord frowns on that. The Exodus says this is not a righteous act in the eye of the Lord. The Lord frowns on that. And I don't think we need to go far. Within Jamaica, what this has done is it has made our society rather not trustworthy, right? Thank the Lord that we're making strides where investors from outside feel a level of confidence to invest in the country. But if you talk to the average Jamaican every single day, just to engage somebody in business, you have to ask yourself, what is this person going to extort some money from? What is this person? What do you want from me? Because there's a level of distrust. And I think it's a crisis proportion. I may be exaggerating the point, but I am a Jamaican and I do not trust going into business with just any and anybody. So if I want a mechanic, I need to I can't just walk. I don't feel free walking into a mechanic shop, because at the end of the day, I'm going to ask myself, is this person going to rip me off? Try to rip me off for their own gain? I have to call a friend and say, hey, recommend this person. And even when the person recommend that person to you, you still tread very carefully, because there's a level of distrust in our society. And I think it's because of this first woe here that we have, that this relationship, this economic relationship at times takes on some imbalance. And those who have the power and the might in regard to how it is done, they oppress others. And those are the things that at times add and lead to the criminal activities that we have out there.
Reverend Beckford, I know we're speaking specifically to Jamaica here, but in this context, you can't help but think of the countries, the rich countries, the super countries that have exploited the poorer countries of our world. And you talk about countries like sanctions have been imposed on countries. And for what reason? So that they can benefit. So you can't help but not think of what is happening in the wider global space out there.
What is the hope? I don't know if that was your group, Arlie. There's a hope, though.
Hold on, Rev.
Yeah.
Just allow me, just quickly. Question: could it also be like, say, calling out the church? Because sometimes people will say, "Oh, church people, Christians don't belong in certain conversations or certain arguments. It's not our business. Church is church and the state is the state." But is it that the church then should have a voice where you have like unjust laws? And for example, the issue of the banking fees, is it that the pastors, the churches should speak out? And sometimes even when laws are being changed and the joint select committees convene and people can go to parliament to put forward their submissions and to defend their submissions, sometimes church people feel that that's not for them and they mustn't become involved in those things. So is it calling out church people, Christians, pastors to speak up and to speak out against unjust laws or unjust economic practices or unjust financial systems?
No, I
So
think,
that's what I'm putting on the table.
no, man, I think in your comment lies the answer. I think there is a clarion call for us to be involved. You know, look at what I just read here from Exodus and Deuteronomy. You know, this is the Lord in giving his law to his people, not giving a blind eye to the actual daily acts that will reveal righteousness. Right? These are daily acts that will reveal righteousness. And these are institutions that they ought to have righteous people within them who are ensuring that, boy, that people's humanity is protected and that people's livelihood are not taken away and that people are not oppressed or treated as the dirge of society. Who are the best people to do so? I believe it's the people of God, right? And it is an indictment on us when we are having these kind of conversations that we are not at the table. Now, I know I'm going to get myself in trouble here. We love to be at the table when we're talking about abortion, and we love to be at the table when we're talking about gay rights or lack of gay rights. We love to be at that table because, you know, those are big ethical issues for the church. But when we're talking about the banking fees, where the church ought to be at that table. When we're talking about needs, right? The church has to be at that table, right? As I saw the other day, the commercial telling us where we can actually go and download the needs document, and each Jamaican read it and then send your comments and whatever. And I said, whoa, that's good. I need to go and download that document and go through it. And sometimes them documents are lengthy, you know, and, you know, we don't have the discipline to do so, but at least feast your eyes on it so that we're at the table, because every policy, every law is not divorced from righteousness. And I think that is what you're hinting at, Sister Paula, that because we are righteous people, we serve a righteous God who upholds righteousness and who frowns at unrighteousness in all its forms, in whatever area of society, that we also have to pay attention.
Rev,
Not only pay attention, but raise our voices when we can.
Rev, can I interject a second?
Go ahead.
And it's coming from what Sister P raised as well. I remember going, not too long ago, we had two sermons that would have been in this similar era. One was speaking to the spirit of the Antichrist, and the other one was speaking to false prophets. But it would suggest, or it would seem, that we have always been told to separate church and state, which would have been the spirit of the Antichrist, trying to find a way to convince us that the church really does not belong at that table. You do not have a voice there, that is not for you. And in that way, he can then exploit the desires of people who would have a louder voice without us being there. And then that would be, where you would say, well, the false prophets would pretend to be in favor of, how would I put it now, a more modern church. And in doing that, be willing to compromise on some of the requirements of the state being separated from the church. And in this way, I think we have been educated, or how would you put it, socialized to believe that we really should not involve ourselves in certain areas. And that's why even now we look at pastors who want to join political parties as being wrong. They don't need to get into that sphere of politics. Church really should not be in there. And I think we're just keeping the same thing going over and over and over.
Very interesting thoughts, Brother Cleve. And I think hitting at and solidifying the point that within the hope embedded in the text is this idea of a pushback against the abuse that has been established. And God's people ought to be in a place, in a position to do so. As you rightfully said, we have been cultured this way to separate our involvement and locate it merely in the confines of the church and what I call selected morality, right? What we select as morality and what we choose is priority in regards to morality and forget other things. In the scriptures, though, especially in the prophets and in the laments and in God's case against Israel and the nations that oppress them and Israel who oppressed its own people, he had an issue, a serious issue with how people were treated by governing powers, by policies, by those who were of the elite class, and those who were in a position to, ensure that his righteousness that he established was experienced by all, right? There's a statement later in one of the woes where he says that the earth will be filled with the glory of the knowledge of God. That is what we push for. And what is the glory of his knowledge? This is his way of doing things, right? He said it. He said, listen, even if a man borrows from you, don't treat him as less than. You're still equals. Not because he comes and borrows from you. No, you treat him like, boy, this is your puppet, right? And he has no say, right? That does not take away from his humanity. And God was very protective of people's worth as human beings. And I think the church ought to now do the same. Now, let me ask a question, and I hinted at it. In War 1, what is the hope that is presented? Sister Georgia, since you are the voice of the group, what is the hope that is embedded to fight against this kind of economic oppression by Babylon? What was the hope?
Well, I think what we had looked at was the fact that the scripture talked about debtors suddenly arising against you and would become awakened to what is happening and, to use your word a while ago, to push back and make them tremble. And then you will become their victim. So kind of turning the tables on them through righteousness. One of the things I thought about too is the fact that sometimes as believers, we are placed in positions, whether where we work, some of us work in places of high influence, where sometimes we can bring influence to bear, but we don't. So we are sometimes there when policies are being written, we are sometimes there when decisions are being taken, but because of who we're working with and the fear of speaking truth to power, as believers, we say nothing. And I believe that, again, is one of the ways that we can wake up, so to speak, to make them tremble. But I'm seeing the hope lying in the actions of us as believers, as a church, in, as your words, push back against this.
And I so agree with that. I won't add any more to it. There is a negative, not a negative, but there's a concern also in the hope that if the righteous group does not do it, somebody else will. And they may not necessarily approach it the way how the righteous group would do it. If you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
People get to the place where sometimes you have to ask yourself, do they do this because the systems that are set up are blocking them from acting in a right and proper way? So they will try to beat the system because they are tired of the system beating down on them. And one of the challenges that we face as a Jamaican society is a term that has been used quite a bit. They call them disenfranchised youth. Youth on the fringes, and you ask yourself the question, are they pushing back against the system? And by doing so, creating more problems and more chaos. And I think that is why So they're looking for hope, you know. And so they're saying, I'm going to find it in my own way and with my own instruments and tools. So when you're in Montego Bay now, and you're not celebrating or glorifying a particular act, scamming, but you have youngsters there in these communities who are saying, boy, that is what I aspire for. That is what I want, because I am pretty much taking back what they have taken from or kept from us. This is my way of fighting the Babylon system. But really and truly, we know what the heart of it really is to load. They're pretty much going to do exactly what is to load themselves up. But because of the lack of a righteous pushback that can give some hope, people know, say, boy, once the system or the society, whoever it is, go a particular way, the church is going to stand up and push back against it. And this will give them some hope to say, you know what, let us continue to believe that we will be delivered from this, and so not create more problems. If you get what I'm saying with the hope here embedded in this one.
And I think it was Reverend Smelly when he had preached, and he reminded us that hope is not passive, right? Hope is not a strategy. We have to do something about it.
Exactly. That was a good word by Reverend Smelly, boy. I tell you, that was an excellent, solid piece of word there on hope. Rev, blessings on you. Know you're on. Cleve says, creating chaos because there's a vacuum in right leadership and guidance. Exactly so, Cleve. And I think we have to be mindful of that if we do not step up to the plate and help out and show that, you know, there can be hope, you know, then, you know, I said on Sunday, let's dream again, you know, but it's difficult to tell people to dream when the system that is in place is only catering to a particular group and it's not giving them the opportunities to make strides in that regard, right? What's the second woe there? We have much time. Let's go, sorry, Allah. The second hope. Second woe, sorry.
The second one had to to do with unjust gain. We had talked about.
Yes.
And we saw the hope, so to speak, in verse 11, where it talked about the stones of the wall will cry out and the beams of the woodwork will echo it, kind of like an exposure.
Yes. Exposing this particular gain. And,
right.
You know, boy,
exposing the unjust gain.
Unjust gain, you know, that's just, you know, we have to ask ourselves, boy, how do we feel about that when it happens and we see it happening, and how do others see it as well? You know, let's look at Jeremiah. I know we don't have much time, but I want to read Jeremiah 22 that, you know, elaborates on some unjust gain and how this can actually be visualized. Jeremiah 22, verse 13 there, is the judgment against evil things. Here's what it says, Jeremiah 22, verse 13. Woe to him, another woe to him who builds his palace by unrighteousness, his upper rooms by injustice, making his countrymen work for nothing, not paying them for their labor. He says, I will build myself a great palace with spacious upper rooms. So he makes large windows in it, panels it with cedar, and decorates it with red. Right? And he goes on to talk about, does it make you a king to have more and more cedar? Did not your father have food and drink? He did what was right and just. So all went well with him. He defended the cause of the poor and the needy. And so all went well with him. Is not what it means to know me, declares the Lord. You hear them statement there? Sister Paula, is that not what it means to know me, declares the Lord? To defend the cause of the poor and the needy, and to reject gaining wealth, building our kingdoms by unjust means. By unjust means. And in a practical way, it really means that those of us who are at the seat where salaries are being discussed, and you realize an increase is going on the salary of a particular worker, and it is not for another worker, we have to ask ourselves, is this just? Is this just? Those who have worked hard to build this company and build this institution, how are we treating them? Right? And I think sometimes we tend to overlook that. But Sister Georgia says the day of judgment will come. And the day of judgment is this, that there will be an exposure, right? You have devised shame for your house by cutting off many people, right? You have forfeited your life. The very stones will cry out, right, from the wall, and the plaster will respond from the woodwork, right? And so this level of arrogance and building our empires by unjust gain, we have to be mindful that, there is exposure, God's judgment. And, sometimes we think that God's judgment is it's always supernatural, by the way, but we look for judgment on, sometimes we say, boy, Jamaica needs to be judged by God. And when we talk about judgment, we're talking about maybe a natural disaster, or, something cataclysmic happening or something like that. But sometimes when we see certain things unfold before our eyes in societies, we just have to say, well, Father, have thine own way. Because there are times when only God can really bring that kind of exposure, and it calls on God's people to act likewise. All right, so that's woe 1 and woe 2, and we see embedded in them, I see some chat here, let me see a chat here. James Simpson, would James 5:1-7 be in this context? Have the people of the Lord been placed in certain for such a time as this? Sister Paula says, I really do believe so. At all times, Sister Paula, especially in our Jamaican context, we have to call a spade a spade. Jamaica's crime problem is not about the young men them that we see on Red Hills Road or Grand Spen or in Norwood sitting on the corner and shooting the guns. No, what the text is revealing to us is that these woes that we are identifying are contributing factors to where we're at, and we have a responsibility to respond accordingly. So Brother James' text of James 5:1-7, don't know why I choose James, but his name is James anyways. But he says, now listen, you rich people. The author here saying, James 5:1-7, listen, you rich people, weep and wail because of the misery that is coming upon you. Your wealth has rotted, moths have eaten your clothes, your gold and silver are corroded, their corrosion will testify against you, eat your flesh like fire. You have hoarded wealth in the last days. Look, the wages you failed to pay the workmen who mowed your fields are crying out against you, right? The cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord Almighty. You have lived on earth in luxury and self-indulgence. You have fattened yourselves in the day of slaughter. You have condemned and murdered innocent men who were not opposing you. That is righteousness. Here we're getting tonight a picture of what God sees as well as righteousness, right? Thank you, Brother James. Very challenging text there as to how we treat each other and how we treat the other person in society. right? Who we may not think is deserving of particular treatment because of where they come from, because of their status and so forth. We have to ask ourselves, boy, are we contributing to how people really feel about themselves and in some way act out in that regard? Because when people don't feel too good about themselves, you know, they try to push themselves up, and they will do it in ways that are aggressive, toxic, and even detrimental to society, right? I think this is Brother Becky there. We misdirect government funds to focus on the youth when they are the consequences of the indulgence of rich while the righteous remain silent. I was waiting for your voice, Brother Becky, and that is a telling statement there. They are the consequences of the indulgence of the rich while the righteous remain silent. Every aspect of our lives, home life, work, and community must be righteous. And then that is where we give hope to society. Thank you for the thoughts. Excellent thoughts on the matter. Let's go now to group 2. We're going to conclude tonight. We're going to get finished because we don't have more time to look at the other woes. But group 3, go ahead. Mention your woe and the hope, the parallel. Group 2, woe 2, which is found in, woe 3, sorry, which is found in 12 to 14. 12 to 14, woe 3 coming from group 2. Where's group 2? Don't go silent, man. We come back in silence tonight. You know, that's a recurring thread in the study. So come on, group.
I'll do woe number 2, so it allow Cleve to do the woe number 1. I do woe 3. I'll do 4.
Okay. Go ahead.
So go ahead, Cleve can do the first one. This is number 3.
Oh, so you're doing 4, Becky.
Right, I do 4.
Okay, 4. All right. Go ahead, Cleve. Cleve? Woe number 3.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute.
All right.
Woe number 3. Woe to him who builds a city with bloodshed and establish a town by injustice.
Oh, boy. You have to go too far.
Our parallel for that one really was the politicians and their indulgence or their creation of the garrison communities to support them in their quest for power. So we looked at that as being the Jamaican parallel for that.
Yeah, and boy, you could take an entire night and talk about that and get even the experts like Brother Beckford there to give us some more insights on that, because that is a real Jamaican challenge. And, you know, I've always been an advocate for truth and reconciliation in Jamaica, because for decades we have experienced bloodshed in these particular garrison communities. And, you know, the influence of politics and it has evolved into other arenas of influence within these communities. You know, it's a story that is sad, very sad, and I don't think we understand how much of a crisis we have on our hands as a nation in this regard.
Yeah,
you know, and there's another bloodshed, though, Cleve, that I would add to that too. That Jamaica has seen an increase in the past decade or so is the contract killings. You know, we have seen an increase in contract killings. Murders are being hired, and they are being hired, and they are taking people's lives, shedding blood for money. And you know, the Babylonians here, that the parallel is so true. You know, our bloodshed, there are various factors contributing to it. But this one, you know, You have families who have a disagreement over land and they contract somebody to kill a family member. You have people who are in relationship who it goes sour and, you know, they contract somebody to snuff out the life of another person. You know, it's just very sad, very sad. And the thing about it is, no matter where you are, if somebody contracts a killer, they will find you. They will find you. And the text begins with arrogance, right? And the killers in Jamaica are very, very brazen. We use the term brazen, them bare face, as we would say. And in traffic, no matter where you are, they're gonna find you, they're gonna kill you. And the thing about it is that if there are innocent people around, they will just be seen as collateral damage. And this is a serious bloodletting that I think cannot go unnoticed, in addition to what you have mentioned. And then there are others that we can talk about: the domestic violence that is taking place, the killing of our children at alarming rates, the killing of security personnel as well, the attack on security personnel.
I was going to come to, this was not raised in the group, but it also crossed my mind when you mentioned even for killing of security people, because I was looking at the way drug cartels or drug traffickers have chosen to use our island as a port, and as such they have been building their base using bloodshed and terrorism to consolidate what they wish to use to make us into a pipeline, if you want to put it that way.
Yes, yes, yes.
And as a result, those who would seek to interfere would pay the penalty with their lives. I mean, if the police interfere with anything that they're doing, they would kill them with impunity. They really don't care what anyone else says. So they are actually building their empire.
Yeah, that's it, the building of the empire, right? And so life, the sacredness of life is lost.
Yeah.
The sacredness of life is lost. You're so right. You're so right. And you know, that hurts my heart, and I think every loving Jamaican who love their country, it breaks our heart that the sacredness of life is somewhat lost in our society. You know, it really breaks my heart. I remember when I was in Maxwell Avenue, their pastoring at a church, that, you know, very violent community. And the thing about it is, you know, you'd have bodies pop up every now and again in just unknown areas. The place had bush around it as well, the church and other communities. And, you know, if they found a body, and we saw that, you know, we saw that trend, not just today, but it has been happening. We saw a body. And, you know, children would just walk, look at it, stare over it, and, you know, there's no adult there saying, no, man, you know, remove the child from that, you know, just, you know, a dead body. And you realize, wow. So it's not just today, you know, that we have gotten to this place over a period of time, you know, and this issue of violence, boy, I tell you, we have to check our hearts too as individuals, you know, because violence can be contagious, especially when you live in a violent community, in a violent society, you know. And the other day I was driving, just yesterday, not the other day, yesterday I was driving and I almost had an accident because the fellow, it wasn't a taxi guy, but the fellow decided to, you know, when you pass Mega Mart going north, and you have the turn to go Barbican, and then you have Waterloo continue. And I'm in the lane. Now, normally when I drive, my father taught me that a long time, you stay in the lane where you're going to go. So I'm in the lane, I know I'm going left, that's the lane that carries you continuing onto Waterloo. I'm in that lane, the guy is on my outside, right? They teach you though, boy, judgment in driving. And the guy, I'm thinking the guy would go to Barbican. And when you reach at the top of the hill there, the guy just came right over on me. and I had to, navigate well so that we didn't have a collision. And he went on his way. And I tell you something, I get vexed, man. Because he just went on his way and I'm driving behind him. And I'm saying, boy, you just want to drive this guy down and just tell him a piece of your mind and, show yourself up. But as I drove along, it just, that period of anger just kind of dissipate. And, I drove behind him from right there all the way to Shortwood and Constant Spring Road. And, it felt like nothing, it went, it just left me and there you go. But for some people, that's not the case. You'd have had an altercation right there, or road rage as they call it. Yeah. And so we have to ask ourselves sometime, boy, even as Jamaicans, if we too are not even prone to some violent acts. But go ahead, please.
Yeah. The hope for that one was verse 14. For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. Mm-hmm. And that is what we hope for.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. You know what? I know we're talking about crime strategy, and each year we have that discussion. But that is hope for us as a nation, huh? Yep. That even though we are a nation filled with bloodletting and crime, that there will come a time when the knowledge of the Lord the knowledge of the glory of the Lord will cover the earth. Well, you know what, brothers and sisters? And here's the recurring theme. The Church of Jesus Christ is the embodiment or the capsule of that knowledge. And instead of us waiting for the second coming for God to inaugurate his eternal kingdom, why not, in the here and now, be the conduits of the knowledge of God in the earth? Not talking when we go out there and give out a track or whatever, is what Brother Beckford said earlier. Not being silent, speaking up, putting our foot forward, ensuring that we're doing things that are giving people hope in our nation of crisis. Brother Beckford, over to you now. Second woe there in this passage.
Right, the second woe said, woe to him who gives drink to his neighbors, pouring it from the wineskin till they are drunk, so that he can gaze on their bodies, on their naked bodies. Wow. This for me has to do with the quiet ways in which capitalism have that feature. The quiet ways in which you commit a sin, you commit a crime, but you're not the one who's committing the crime. So you feel that you are separated from it. So we have business people who do illegal acts in the business. Selling alcohol to people is illegal, but as we're discussing the group, people say, but I own the place, but it's not me selling them on the alcohol. But I'm saying you're still committing the crime. Yes. Although you think you're far removed from it. And we do that to poor people. We suck them in because of lack of opportunities. Let them do the the dirty work, and then we think our hands are clean. So we have people in the church who own a restaurant with bar, people who own bars, people who own certain clubs. But as far as they are concerned, it is not their responsibility. I mean, I'm not responsible for the crime. Yes, I own the place. I know the place is running a brothel on it, but I collect my rent, so I'm cool. So these are the things that we tend to take ourselves out, especially as church people. So we sell the liquor, we give the people the drink, but we're not responsible for their drunkenness. Neither do we provide a car to carry them home when they're drunk, but we provide the wine. And so it said that you'll be filled with the shame instead of glory. Now it is your turn. Drink and be exposed. The cup from the Lord, which is the hope, the cup from the Lord's right hand is coming around to you. Yes. So what they're saying is okay. I the Lord not turn a blind eye. You're doing this, but you are gonna pay for it. And so that is the hope that they know that they love. In Jamaica, we say they love their comeuppance.
Yes.
Because because the Lord is not silent on it. So we are to look at our businesses, look at our transaction, and to what extent we are affecting other people physically, mentally, otherwise, and don't believe that it is okay. Because the Lord will come around to you.
Wow. Well said, Brother Becky. Listen, let me give you some historical credence. The Babylonians were known for having their drinking parties. You read Daniel chapter 5, and the drinking parties was where they would invite people, but at the same time, people would become drunk on their wine and then indulge in their immoral acts. And I think you coined it so well. Here is where you who are the instigator, you who are the one who has the structure in place to create an environment for immoral and unrighteous behavior. You do so, you step away, but then at the same time, you look at those who are engaged in it. You laugh, you criticize, you judge, move right along. I love what you said. The Lord is not blind concerning that. There is hope for those who act in this way. I wish we could elaborate on that one, but running along to the last woe. Group number 3, the last woe, woe 5. It climaxes because at the end of the day, when you have those who are oppressing people economically, they are building by unjust means, greed and arrogance. There is bloodletting. They build their city with bloodletting. They seduce and manipulate people into doing acts, unrighteous acts. This all culminates. It climaxes. This is what we call, and you will let us know. Group 3, final woe.
Okay, the final law we looked at like idols, and in our society there are many things that as a people we have made idols like wealth, like Arlene was saying, and we said, everybody is asking nowadays, what is your net worth? And other things like material things, house, land, all the other material things, pleasures, and or careers also. And in terms of pleasures, we're looking at, with the COVID, it has affected so many people. Carnival, the parties and all of that, and people are so feeling so depressed because they can't make money by those means anymore. Then we have, all right, political parties we identified also as idols, or people have made them into the structures into idols. False religions such as revivalism, Muslim, and Rastafarianism, and also positions in our church. We have set up people or pastors as idols. We're looking up to our other leaders as idols in our country and in our churches. So basically, what the hope is, well, these things we're using them to replace God.
Right.
Place that God should have in our lives. And when all of these can go anytime and you're left with nothing. So our hope then is, our only hope is in God.
The Lord is in his
And Reverend Beckford, let me just add quickly, because you will notice that this particular woe, it was different from the others. It started out of what value. What does it cost a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? So it started out, it was a food for thought right there. What does it, what value is it when you, what value is it when you have all these that you make and then you lose your own soul? So again, it points out that because as I say, a statement was made there before. He said, woe to you. So that in itself, right there and then, it was something that was interesting, different from the other woes.
Wow. Wow. Interesting. Thank you. Wow. This is amazing stuff. I wish we didn't have to end tonight, because all the woes have actually struck a nerve, a Jamaican nerve. And I tell you something, I'll add to the woe there, Sister Marcia. The evangelical community in Jamaica, in the West, is going through a period now where it actually has to remain silent and realize that the Lord is in his holy temple. Evangelicalism is under scrutiny, and I don't have to give you all the details. If you're following the news and you're following recent happenings, you would know that this structure that has been set up by the Western Church, I idolize at times, and that has given dictates to how church run in the West, has, in my view, has crumbled, and it is now in a state where it needs to be reviewed and re-envisioned. And all local churches and denominations that align themselves to what we call evangelicalism must ensure that we do that soul searching, because the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him. Pretty much as he said, that whatever you hold as an idol will crumble before your very eyes. And he remains steadfast and consistent. And that is why now we end the night by going to our go-to text from Sunday, Habakkuk chapter 3, verse 17 to 19. That is why the prophet could actually affirm that in spite of, he's going to be confident, in spite of the deteriorating conditions, the escalation of the crisis, he's going to put his hope. He's going to be rejoice in the Lord and be joyful in God, my Savior. The sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He enables me to go to the heights. May the Lord bless us, and may the Lord bless our beloved island that actually is in need of his attention. Deacon, Elder Blake, over to you, sir.